This is beautiful. Look at this little guy. Isn't he
It's
gorgeous?
so much fun.
But this, I didn't see the tongue before. Isn't that beautiful?
Brand new.
So much fun.
So I suspect, Michelle, you like I take a fair bit of pride in walking through our home.
Oh, it's amazing to see what's happened over the 10 years and just how much has been accomplished and how beautiful it is, David.
I know.
Yeah.
I was thinking through this process of moments that are special to me. Can you think of a few? I know there's many, but...
Oh, you know, there are hundreds, but I think the one that was really special to me was honestly walking into the home in the early days when we first opened. And there were children, and they were laughing, and their parents looked so relaxed and composed. And you know, what I realized was we're just creating a place for parents to have a break, but it was about the children, you know, and so that really was meaningful to me.
Certainly a lesson to me, though, is that these children can be happy and fulfilled in their own way, and you're right, that's a moment of great joy. I gave this a lot of thought, and I have to tell you, it's right now. It's right now to have gone through this journey and had challenges and fun and laughter and the collection of people all the way along, and to know now that it's really in pretty solid ground, and
completely.
I'm very pleased.
Well, you should be. I mean, you were here right from the start, and you were a champion of it for all these years, so I think you have a special pride.
You betcha. Prior to 1980, children with complex medical care were largely cared for in institutional environments. In the late 1980s, the government of Ontario had an initiative to try to put these children into families' homes so that they would be brought up in the community and be integrated in the society around us. The difficulty was that this put tremendous pressure on the families caring for these children, and they needed a break. Maggie saw this because she provided nursing care through her facility's special care people, and in doing so saw the stress and strains placed on these families. And it was her vision. So keep in mind, at the outset, this was Maggie Wallagora's vision, to provide out-of-home respite and palliative care for chronically ill children. So Ren, we were involved in the early days. You were younger then. The Cedarbrook Society is something that we both became involved in and supported you a little earlier than I, and maybe tell us how you became involved.
Well, before we get to how I dragged you into it, the initial introduction was a defined need in society that we became aware of through involvement in a company that provided services to families with special needs children.
You know, for 2 years, this is my life. That's the main thing. I need rest all the time because you don't get to sleep. Brittany's care is like 24 hours. It's right around the clock.
And the need was defined as basically those families got no respite from the care, and the state was providing inadequate services. So there was no relief. There was relief needed just for the health of the families. And that was the original idea, and it led to the formation and registration of a charity, the Cedarbrook Society, and that society was going to try and find and establish the home. Well, the concept of respite was to give the families a break, and the only way families could get a break was to take the children that were requiring the care away from the families, and they still needed to be cared for. So there had to be a facility set up that could provide that level of care, and it was specialized. So yes, it needed to be a separate facility.
Right. And I happen to have available the early financial statements where we first started at the very beginning, at least from a financial perspective, February 29th, 96. And of course, I can see that we had maybe $50,000 available. We had lots of promises out there. And so it was an early start, humble perhaps.
Yes. I guess that probably gave us the cash we needed for the deposit when our search actually identified a home that we were advised would be suitable for respite. And at the time, I guess we believed that not that much additional money would be required. But yeah, we had raised the capital we needed for the deposit.
And can you recall what your thoughts were about the home?
The setting was absolutely beautiful. We knew that the level of care could be provided because the service, the nursing service that had introduced us to the need, was available to backstop the home. So I would say the location was terrific. We certainly believed at the time the facilities would be adequate, and it was a question of then figuring out how to pay for it.
Right. And to put things in perspective, I'm looking at a transfer document that, only a few months later in July 1996, we were able to close on a $700,000 purchase, which of course is the current location of the Darling home. And I remember that being challenging a little bit, although I think you were able to help immeasurably in that regard.
Well, we got additional support and commitments from Rotary, the Rotary clubs in the area. But I think the biggest savior was we had a friend actually, I had a friend in Milton that in discussions with what we were trying to do sort of leapt at the opportunity to help, and fortunately we're in a position to help, and they advanced the funds that we needed to complete the transaction.
And that's, of course, Bill and Barb.
Bill and Barb McLean, yeah, wonderful people. I think it gives one some peace to be able to look back and say that I actually contributed to something that met a need, and I think more credit to you because you continued to run with it into its subsequent iterations. But yes, it's quite a source of satisfaction to have contributed something to what is a very definite need in society.
That wasn't a small contribution.
Thanks, David.
I have been a member proudly of Rotary for 27 years now, and so it was initially brought to the club as a community service project for us to consider. And a number of members became quite excited, really bought into it, myself included, and it got legs. So it was really our little club that got it rolling.
Well, the early days, of course, we didn't have the resources to come out of the gate with the fanciest materials, and our archives, if you will show us that we started off with a folder. I thoroughly enjoyed, though, I remember it so well, the cedar brick home and the schematic of opening the doors.
Opening the doors, yeah, I remember it well.
We got to the spiral bound copies. I remember so well writing some of this. And then I think the whole Rotary initiative really, I think, pushed us to another level where we got a little more professional, as I recall, with the materials, and I know you're involved in that.
The 3 Rotary clubs in Oakville, we made presentations with many of those initial materials, and there was an excitement level there, so the momentum was building.
My recollection, it wasn't a clear path. Would that be fair?
We were concerned that would these children ever get advantage of the potential improvement of their development, and as important, their caring parents, would they ever really receive the respite, which is so critical a component of Cedarbrook and now Darling Home for children.
You're right. We thought we could put a coat of paint on and off we go. In fact, our first campaign was, I think, $775,000, which paid for the $700,000 worth of property and a coat of paint.
That's right.
I think we were slightly naive.
Yeah. It's rolling, and it's doing what originally Maggie had wanted. Her vision was that there were no places in Southern Ontario to do what she wanted to do. And her role, as we recall, was to fill that gap. It's now been filled.
The Cherry years were very formative years for us. Cindy Cherry tells us that after Rose's passing, her father received volumes of mail, and she happened, a serendipitous moment, to pick up one written by Michael O'Shea, who was looking for support to establish a children's paediatric hospice in Ontario, similar to Canuck Place in Vancouver. Cindy was compelled by the letter and spoke to Don, which led to their involvement. Concurrently, Michael had heard about our efforts to establish a respite hospice facility and had agreed to work with us and become a board member. I remember very clearly Don and Cindy coming to meet Maggie and I to tour the home. Our organization had a lot of heart, but truthfully was a little fragile. No employees, no campaign office, funding challenges, and I thought the subsequent due diligence by Don's professional advisors would end the opportunity. I was wrong. Don wasn't interested in such investigation. He said he would help, and that's what he did. Fortunately for us, that included his daughter Cindy, who became a board member and worked tirelessly in our gala and golf tournaments. Of course, Don could be Don. I remember a moment in a presentation when a board member was doing a speech about the home. It went on for some length, and when he sat down, Don said rather loudly, "What was that, the Gettysburg Address?" The Cherry family involvement put us on a much stronger path, allowing us to re-architect the home, raise our profile, creating a sound fundraising base. Don was very supportive of our construction campaign and enjoyed spending time at the home with workers who had donated their time. All of this led to the Phase 1 opening in 2004.
These kids need a break, and they can get that break at Rose Cherry's home.
There is no doubt that Rose's legacy lives on at the home. We're very grateful. Siobhan, my recollection is you came to us through Junior League initially. And it'd be fair to say when you first came, we weren't really there and we had to do a lot of work to get a little more full-fledged.
Yeah, we were nowhere close. Yep, it was a dream. At that point, it was just a dream.
And I would say that that initial thought as to what your sojourn on the board would be morphed into a 10-year odyssey.
Right. You asked for a hand and you took my heart and soul.
Our pleasure, trust me. So when I think back, there's just no question that we had reached a point where we could start to lever some of the connections, and we determined, or I should say you determined in a moment of great clarity, that we should have a gala event. Can you give us how you came up with that idea?
Well, yeah, I think what we were looking for was a consistent means of funding, and we were trying to wrap our heads around how we could consistently get funds in to enable us to take the charity to the next level. And actually I was having a bubble bath one night and thinking about, you know, could we put together an event that would, I'm an interior designer, so I wanted to get AREDO involved, the Association of Registered Interior Designers, because I knew there'd be a lot of talent there. And could we put together a gala event that would involve AREDO designers, perhaps contributing holiday decorations that we could auction off and so on and so forth, and
Well,
it worked.
Well, it went further than that.
Yeah.
Of course, we had a spectacular event in the Cadillac Fairview Eaton Center.
We had Hazel McCallion there. We had some very wonderful people came out and support us in our inaugural gala.
And really took us to another level.
It did, and a big part of that was as a result of, again, the Junior League's involvement. They provided the volunteers for the night, but they had a previous relationship with the Globe and Mail, and which I was able to leverage, and got to meet with the editor of the Globe and Mail and kind of pitched what we were all about, and he loved the idea. And so as a result, as part of the gala, they created a fabulous magazine for us, which went to 50,000 households in the GTA. And that was, again, another, pole vault for the charity for, recognition, and just a great way to get people aware of what we were trying to achieve.
So on the same theme, we came up with our first newsletter.
Yep.
Called Homefront in 2002. We started to build a little more. We had a development office, at least with one employee, to help us do these kinds of things. And you and I think, came up with the idea of maybe doing an old-fashioned house raising. I, at the time, had been going through Amish country on a bike and saw them doing a house raising. And I thought, gee, that's a good idea. We should do a virtual house raising. Of course, I brought it to you, and then you took off with that whole idea.
Yep.
And surrounded yourself, I think, ultimately with some very capable people.
Oh, yeah. it was amazing because we had HOK. We had you and I had met with HOK, and they gave us.
They're the architects,
right,
of course.
right, and they introduced us or brought in Tony and Denise Santini, who came up with this amazing design. And then with Don Cherry's assistance, we got Tom Ensemble, who was with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. And then we ended up with Tom Finan, Les Med, Roger Floyd, who built the, what's the name of that stadium?
Sky Dome.
The Sky Dome, yeah, the Sky Dome. Roger, whatever its current morph is, but so he built that and he stepped up, and once Roger was in place, I think a lot of people really appreciated that this was going to be a pretty amazing exercise, and we had great people. We just had a really amazing team.
Well, from my perspective, you know, there are moments, I don't remember if you remember Ruth Matheson, but
Absolutely.
there are people that were just very rich in who they were, and she would take me aside when I'm stumbling over organizational and trying dealing with board, and Roger Floyd was that kind of person.
Yeah,
I was
a fine
I was
man.
wound pretty tight as to whether we could do this, and he took me for lunch and basically said, David, I built the Sky Dome. I think we can get this built. Fair enough. Don't you worry about it. We
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah, he's a fine man. He was great to work with, and I'm thrilled to call him a good friend.
Well, and at PCL, of course, on the construction side.
Chris Gower.
Yeah. And let's talk about the opening and your feeling when we went that day in 2004 and opened the doors. How did you feel about all of that?
Oh, it was really time. Like, we had been pushing that ball uphill for a long time, and it was time to get to the peak and roll down the other side, and I think that was the way that day felt.
So I wanted to leave with a thought, because I remember many times when we were just up against it, and I'd get a phone call and you're incredibly frustrated about something, and I'd say, get the wine out
And vice versa.
and let's just talk it through and see if we can find our way through this.
Or scotch.
Or scotch.
Yeah.
But here we are with wine again.
Yeah.
And
Cheers,
so
David.
That was a great journey.
To a job well done.
You betcha.
Well, back in around 2002, the construction committee, who we knew many people on that committee, reached out to us and said they had a need, and we were happy to learn more about it and then happy to get involved.
And the nature of the design, of course, evolved, but when you came to it, I gather there was some complexity involved in construction, and also trying to marry a house building type, volunteer type, donor type construction. Can you help us a little bit of those challenges?
Sure. Well, the home is interesting because it has medical gases, and it has complexities that, you know, places like hospitals would have as well. So we helped in finishing the design. There was quite a bit of design done, and I think the role that we played, which was more important in the process, was, you know, guaranteeing that the cost would be at a level that the organization could afford, and take the risk on finding charitable donations to fill in the gap. And we did that in the contract, and then followed on by finding trades, getting charitable donations, and then building the home. It was a complicated process to bring everything together, particularly when so many people were doing it for free. Motivating them, keeping them on track wasn't a conventional process, and certainly Siobhan did a very good job keeping us going. You know, Don Cherry was a great assistance to us, because he would help motivate the people who were doing it for free. It wasn't just companies doing it for free. The people coming there were doing it on their time for free as well. And Don would come on site. You know, he used to often be dressed up, but often not. He'd come in his jeans, and he'd drop in unexpected, and he'd just spend time with the workers. And whenever we wanted to celebrate a milestone, he'd come and sign autographs for 4 hours. He'd stay as long as what was needed. Don gave a lot of his time and energy, and the people working on the job site really appreciated that.
Well, I can say that it was a pretty proud moment when we had the opening, and I think you presented at that time the key, symbolic key to the home. Was that an enjoyable moment for you?
Yeah, it was a very proud moment. I was lucky enough to be able to present it, but, you know, we had 175 contractors involved. We had, thousands of workers. So many people gave their time, their energy. So realizing the vision for so many people and having so many people give their time and energy, there haven't been in my career as many proud moments. So yeah, it was a fun and exciting day.
And of course we then rolled out phase 2 just to keep you on your toes. We hadn't raised enough money to do all at once, but my recollection anyway, that really went pretty smoothly, I gather.
Yeah, well, and it did. It went very well, and we dropped a lot of the formalities. So, we were able to build when the design was completed. We were able to engage trades that, again, were emotionally connected, had a great experience to come back. We knew the building, and our superintendent who built it, George, and Pia, our project manager, they wanted to be involved, they wanted to come back. And then I think after that we did a landscaping project, which was fabulous because we built swings that kids in wheelchairs could enjoy, and then watching them enjoy it, those 3 parts really completed the project and really, I think, completed the vision, knowing that all that was designed and thought of, as you said, in the first phase, but we couldn't afford it. Seeing it all come together, seeing it all finished, was pretty amazing.
It certainly was. And I think that Mr. Stoller would be proud. I know PCL has a very strong history of charity and support in the community, and he would be proud, and you guys all should be proud of your effort. Tony, when I think of this journey, you're one that started pretty early on in the process and has seen it through much to the end, which has been fun because you've seen the whole evolution, if you will. But on your side, how did you first get introduced to at the time, Rose Cherry Project, or Storybook Home Project?
Right. Well, it started off with me being asked by Roger in our office to meet in Lou's office, which at the time was my boss, and I sat down with the 2 of them and they explained to me how we've been asked to do a bit of work for a charitable organization at the time who I didn't know about, and Lou was convinced, or was trying to convince me, that this was just going to be a simple renovation. Simple, just go there, do a simple thing where you're going to be in and out in a few days, and we're going to get involved as a company behind a charity.
And at that time, that was HOK Urbana.
I was
Architects.
HOK Urbana, yes.
They were a fairly large firm, is that fair?
They were one of the largest architectural firms at the time in the world. So it was very nice of them to sort of take the task on. And
such as they saw it at the time.
That's right, as they saw it at the time, and I got tapped on the shoulder as being one of the new young kids in the office, as this would be a nice sort of initiation, if you will, to the office. So I came out to the home on the Saturday after I met with Lou and Roger in their office on the Thursday, and as I drove up through the winding driveway, which led me to sort of believe that I'm going to this spectacular sort of site, which it is. Drove up and saw the existing house, and as I walked around the house, it's dawned on me very quickly that it wasn't going to be as simple as I was led to believe it was supposed to be. So the wheels started spinning as to how I was going to go back to my boss, who told me it was supposed to be simple, to explain to him that it really isn't a simple project, and I thought for sure I was going to.
What were the challenges that just made it very difficult for us to have developed that or redeveloped it?
The house, the original house was very interesting in its configuration and its layout. The major challenge that we had was we were designing the space for mobility. It was children in wheelchairs, it was caregivers getting from place to place with the children, trying to get them from one apparatus to another, whether the bed or the couch or whatever it may be. The house was designed as a house, a simple residential house, which did not have the abilities to cater to what the functional programs were. So the structural requirements to make that happen became larger than the house project itself, so it made it very difficult.
So this young fellow in the firm then, I guess, got tagged with redesigning a home pretty much from scratch.
Correct.
And you came up with designs, and we have one here behind us. We didn't end up with that design, but you were very creative, of course. But when we are trying to strive to have a state-of-the-art facility and a modern facility, what are some of the elements to that made it complex but required to be able to properly care for these children and families?
The premise behind the design really stemmed from we wanted to maintain the residential character. And the difficulty for me as the architect at the time was I was at the beginning of a career. So here I have the challenge of designing a residential facility and then have to sort of wrap it with this state-of-the-art care for the children that are chronically and terminally ill. And we had information that we had to sort of implement for the program requirements and equipment that we were wanting to introduce into the home, the lifts and so on, the snoozlin room, which was, you know, one of the very first, not the first, but one of the first of its kind for that size that we were planning to do for the home. The hydrotherapy pool was also an initiative that we were trying to embark on, all of which added to the state-of-the-art care, which hadn't been done at the time in a facility such as this.
The opening, can you help me with your feelings at that time when we finally got it open? And of course you'd been there for years and years. It looked at times like we would never get there.
The opening, to this day, I still talk about that day. My wife and I, Denise and I, talk about it as though it was yesterday. It is probably one of the most magical moments in my life. It was a project that was very near and dear to our hearts. We worked diligently and long hours to make it happen. Everybody did. Everybody in the team did. And it was almost as if it was surreal when we actually opened the doors. I still, to this day, can't believe that it's open with every hurdles that we had to jump through. And I still get a pit in my stomach, and I still get teary-eyed when I talk about the home. It was magical. It was like a birth of one of my children for me. It was the project that sort of set my architectural career in motion. The most difficult project I've ever worked on and will be for the rest of my career. I don't think I'll ever work on a project that is as difficult as this one.
And it might be that design is your skill set, but I can tell you there were many meetings when I was tearing my hair out, frustrated in part trying to move the project forward, and often you met me on the door saying, David, we're going to get there. I know we're going to get there. And so from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for that support, because every once in a while you thought, oh, we'll never get there, but we did.
We did. Thank you.
Thank you. At the time we were looking for a new guardian, one would hope to find somebody who had business skills, organizational acumen, passion and love for our cause, engaging, intelligent, attractive, and maybe the last name Darling, so we could call our loved home the Darling Home for Kids. The business expression conquer and consolidate applied to us. We had to now consolidate on an organizational front, governance, human resources. And Michelle was uniquely suited to help a succession of skilled chairs accomplish that. We also had no small task to raise an additional $3 million in capital to complete our home. Again, Michelle rolled her sleeves up and co-chaired that campaign. We're very fortunate to have Michelle Darling and her family as our guardians. We talked about special moments, and certainly the rebranding was fun for me. Yeah. We had taken the previous evolution to a certain point, and it was just a chance for us to start fresh with a new logo, new look. And I know that we spent a fair bit of time looking at many of them. And one idea that we came up with was the whole concept of butterflies incorporated in the logo, and maybe I can get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think when we were talking about it, we thought about three things. I mean, butterflies fly free. We are a butterfly site. I guess we're a UNESCO butterfly preserve, which was kind of symbolic. But for me, butterflies change shape and direction and grow and develop. They're bright, they're colorful, kids love them, and it seemed to me they represented so much of our values and, you know, what we really want to be as a home for kids.
And speaking of kids, we of course launched a phase 2 campaign, and that was part of the idea of the branding, and we'd go out to try to complete the home.
Yeah.
And the home, of course, was in half. We had to. We could only build half of it, and we had the other half to go, which was a $3 million campaign. And speaking of the kids, I'm so proud of these materials because we have had many materials over the time, and really your focus taught me a little bit about the kids more than mine had always been the respite for the parents and their relief. I, of course, recognized the benefit to the children, but I wasn't as focused, and I think you really enlightened us to look at the whole picture. And I think that's what these materials did.
Yeah, I think, you know, I was really struck by a story from me from a long time ago when I was sitting with a friend with her child who falls into the category that we serve. And her child was watching other children play on a play structure. And it seemed to me wrong, because the play structure was not built for him. And so I started to think a lot about our home being a place where our kids could be free to enjoy all the things that other children enjoy, whether it's a playground or a sculpture garden or a swimming pool or a wonderful bathtub. And so that's why, for me, the focus on the kids was so important, making this a great place for them.
And we see that. We see children lighten themselves. They get excited coming here, and I didn't actually see that coming. It's a complete spot for them to have a different experience, and I think we accomplished that.
Well, one of the parents once told me as she comes up the driveway, her son starts rocking in his chair because he knows that he's coming to the Darling Home for Kids and he can hardly wait to get in the doors. And I think we've created that wonderful, special place for them.
So in the challenge category, I remember we had, of course, got this ball rolling. We had got the new branding, we got the materials, and we had all the infrastructure in place, such as it was, to launch the phase 2. And my recollection pretty well is that the market didn't help us too much at that moment. Do you remember that?
Well, I think we started the campaign right when the market was crashing. And I remember all of us sitting around the table at your house, actually, and we were discussing whether or not it was a smart idea to start a huge capital campaign in the middle of what would become one of the worst recessions ever. But this is why our donors are so incredible. Notwithstanding whatever they were going through, they came through for us. They decided that this was just important for us to do. So we were successful, and we should be proud of that.
You're right. It just is meant to be sometimes.
It is meant to be.
I am here with Dr. Sheila Kemp. Sheila, how did you become involved with the home?
I became involved in the Darling Home for Kids probably 17 years ago because I'm a physician. I work at the Hospital for Sick Children. I was a camp director and camp counselor for years, and I also had a disabled sister. So I could see the need for something, certainly for it's very hard to get even a babysitter and get time as a parent on your own when your children are normal. But if they have health issues, then it's very difficult and it's very stressful on all families and members of the family and the other siblings. So when I heard this idea, because I actually live not very far from the home, I stepped up and got involved. And since then, it's a wonderful cause. We've just grown from there, and I'm still involved.
Of course, an important partner in all of this has been the ministries, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, and of course the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. Unquestionably, without their support, it would have been very difficult.
Absolutely, and we still have their continued support and a strong partnership with both of those ministry agencies that really truly allows us to do the work that we do at the Darling Home.
The interesting thing for me is, of course, there was no ministry support respite funding when we started, and we lobbied very, very hard to get it. And one of my favorite moments was standing in the old home with Hugh Robinson, who is very dear to my heart. And I asked him a bunch of questions, and Hugh looked at me and he said, "David, you're asking me these questions like we know the answers." And he said, "We're just going to figure this out together." So Hugh was very special, Janice May in that organization as well. And I have a fond moment with Maidi Yaz, our board member. We had done a lot of campaigning and gone into the ministry offices. Maidi's quite short, and we get into this office, and it had a little bench in the waiting area, and Maidi literally jumped up on the bench. And she puts her hand on the wall and she feels it and she goes, "Mahogany." Now we're getting somewhere. Because we had spent a lot of time in offices that didn't have mahogany, and we were in the deputy minister's office. So it was a long slug. Siobhan's efforts, maybe you can comment on that.
Absolutely. Siobhan Adams, she was a champion for the organization early on, and without fail knocked on a tremendous number of doors to get us into the right people to talk about the work that we were potentially going to do at the Darling Home, and she was instrumental in getting that funding secured.
I think one of the biggest things we did is change the Ministry of Health's mandate on pediatric funding, pediatric healthcare funding, in that we got them to start funding palliative care for children, which they had never done prior to Darling Home for Kids.
So 11 years ago, walked into the office in Toronto and started my new role with the Darling Home, which was managing their office, and was a single staff person at the time. And it's been amazing for me to see the evolution of the home, to go from a small grassroots organization with minimal staff and a tremendous level of volunteer support, and see it transition to the home being built and then expanded. The flurry of activity that takes place on a day-to-day basis within the home, our wonderful frontline staff. We've gone from a an office of one to a home filled with many that truly make a difference every day for our kids and families. So it's been wonderful to see that evolution over time.
And did you think part of your job description would be spending nights at Sick Kids Hospital with some of your clients?
Well, I think one of the great things about the organization is that you're connected with the clients. You're one-on-one with them day in, day out. You get to know them, you get to know their families. So the beautiful part is you're not just sitting in front of a computer and talking on the phone all day, is that you're walking out in the family room, you're curling up with a child, and you feel like you're making a difference day to day.
Well, it's obviously not a job, it's a passion.
Yeah, absolutely. What started as a home and a building has kind of transformed into this kind of amazing therapeutic space, because we've got tons of donors and supporters who care and want to contribute. So our playground where kids can go outside and swing on a wheelchair accessible swing, the snoozlin room, which is that kind of magical space where kids can interact with all sorts of toys and activities. We've got our hydrotherapy pool room where we say that it's a therapeutic space for relaxation and range of motion, but the reality is there's just a lot of splashing and laughter that happens in the pool when kids are there. So yeah, our home has gone kind of beyond our four walls and is able to make a difference in the lives of kids.
When we talk of fundraising, we have our conventional fundraising and campaigns, but of course a backbone to our fundraising are annual events. We talked to Siobhan at some length about the gala that's been so wonderful, but of course we've had golf tournaments every year. Mm-hmm. We've also had our some one-offs like our car rally. We've had the Canada Singing Priest, Father Mark Curtis. We've had the horse racing. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the day of racing at Woodbine.
Yeah, we had that, a couple of those. And all of those have come together, I think, to give an opportunity for people to support the home.
Third-party events are a way to raise funds for the home, but also to get out there into the community and connect with individuals. So we've got our Wheels event, which is a cycling event that takes place every year in the summer, where cyclists from Mattamy raise funds for the home. We've had everything from a lemonade stand with a young girl raising funds to the home to big golf tournaments that take place. So they provide essential revenue and also connect people, I feel, to the home.
We've talked a lot during this film about the past and the evolution of the home, but of course equally important is the future and where we're going. And I'm joined with Lana and Patrina and of course Kristen.
I brought a few people up to have a tour, and I've always told them that when you come and then when you leave, you will not be the same person when you leave. And they told me I've been right. You're not the same person when you leave.
That's so true. And I think that's the one thing that when people come and tour the home, they really get the sense of what it's all about, and you see the need, you see the families, and you know how much it can contribute to their lives. And I think that's the one thing that really draws you in, and you want to become involved in a part of the whole home because it has such a touching piece for you.
And Lana, looking forward, what do you think the challenges and opportunities are for us as a home?
I think we have a lot of opportunities. I think some of the challenges will be making sure that we have the most efficiencies with what we do. We know that we want this beautiful facility to be utilized to its maximum. And we want to make sure that what we can offer families, although this is kind of like their trusted second home for their children, I think we also see an opportunity where we can help them and support them as they try to navigate many of the systems and opportunities that they could have for their children. And we could be a support to them in that journey.
So in many ways we can provide services outside of the physical home that might be, very useful to the families. And I think that's a thrust that as a board we're trying to focus on. I can't tell you how pleased I am that we have the future in your capable hands. There's no question.
Thank you for the opportunity. We're very excited. Certainly I can speak for every member of the board that we have that type of commitment from everyone, and are really humbled by the opportunity to be able to support this home.
And you can certainly see the commitment. Everyone is very interactive. They listen, they ask, just so that going forward there is a true sense of what the families need, and along the continuum of need, what they will need in the future.
David, look at this donor wall. I mean, as I look at it, I'm struck by just how many people, companies, organizations, individuals have supported us over the years. It's a long list, and I can't tell you just how thankful I am to everyone who supported us and made this wonderful home happen.
That goes to for not only the donor wall and all those, the people that were in malls selling trinkets. It goes on and on and on. So our heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you.
It's been outstanding. Thank you for your support.
So we started the film talking about the need we were trying to fulfill, the need for respite, relief for families, and it might be fairly asked, did we make a difference?
Thank you from the bottom of our heart for all that you do for Karis and all the other children. Your gift of time is priceless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We just wanted to say thank you to Darling Home for helping our family so much and letting us appreciate the time that we have together.
And it's been a godsend for my wife and I, for Donna and I. It kept us together.
So thank you, Darling Home. We appreciate everything you've done for us.
So thank you very much to the Darling Home from the Potter family. It meant a lot to us over the years. This is great for our daughter Mackenzie, and it's great for the whole family, and it means a great deal to us. Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Darling Home for Kids for being so supportive during these special times, and for the entire life of my son, Derek Flores. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The evolution of Darling Home was a journey that at times had us pushing destiny, and other times destiny pulled us along, sometimes at breakneck speed. And hence the name, A Determined Destiny. There was an inevitability about the creation of this home. But of course, at the end of the day, as most eloquently said by Mr. Rumsby, it's not just bricks and mortar. We had to have something else. We had to have the people that truly loved and cared for the families and children. And we've been very blessed to have that.
The Darling Home for Kids is truly a beautiful place. A home exquisitely designed with great spaces and nested in nature. Darling is one of the few special homes in Canada like this. There is something else that makes Darling a very special place. A secret ingredient. This mysterious ingredient has no material properties. It is a presence that holds everything together, but it's not wrought into, rather it flows through. We can build a beautiful building in the woods with all the technology to care well for the weak, but if we don't have love, then all we have is an institution. Love is like the wind, or perhaps like a breath. This mystery is not the product of good management. It can't be measured or dosed, but without it, there is only bricks and mortar. Love is the mystery that holds all things together, and Darling is overflowing.